Greetings, Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
Welcome back to the Maverick News Channel, everyone. Let me check the audio here. Aha. We do need to make a change. As we fix everything. Bear with me while I make this adjustment. That's not it. Let me run a promo. We'll be right back. I promise. Okay, here we go.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, defending free speech, Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
We're back, and I think our audio is fixed. I apologize for not being here yesterday. We had a big power bump just before we went. We're about to go live last night. It just knocked everything out. The computer wouldn't boot up. We had a hard drive failure, so I had to fix all of that, and that's why we weren't on last night. So I do apologize. That actually highlights a much larger issue within Canada, which is our electrical infrastructure for our power lines. It's aging. Even in our city, the power lines that feed this neighborhood, the ones that come into it, are ancient. And at least once every other month, we have some sort of a power outage here. It shows how vulnerable the grid is and how we need to harden that and upgrade it. But, you know, it takes dollars to do that. I don't know where we're at with our budget, but I guess we'll find out in a few weeks in November when the federal government in Canada finally is supposed to come through with a budget. Just yesterday, they were outlining their plan, their economic plan, preparing us for whatever they have coming down the pipe. So we'll have to sit back and wait and see if it passes in the House. My guess is the Conservatives will support it in the end. I don't think the Canadian public as a whole has any appetite for another election. So I don't think they will try to force this as a confidence vote. My guess is they'll push this through. But who knows? And a vote on a budget is always a vote of confidence. So I didn't even mean to start talking about that tonight because we have so many other things to discuss, not the least of which is, the crazy ostrich story. I'll comment on that. I have a little bit of information to share with you, but we'll wait until later in the broadcast. Also, peace breaking out in the Middle East, or so they would have us believe. I'm still skeptical that the ceasefire will hold or at least blossom into a full-blown lasting peace in the Middle East, only because we've seen these things fall apart so many times in the past, and because we are still seeing conflict even tonight. as Israel launches attacks into Lebanon. So there's all of that going on. Plus, we're seeing, increased readiness in Venezuela with the government there and their troops as they prepare for what they believe is some sort of imminent invasion into their country by the United States. So we have the peace president in the Middle East supposed to be bringing peace, but I think it's more of a business transaction than anything else there. And I'll lay that out for you tonight as well. Maybe that's what it takes to get to peace these days. I just don't know. And Peter Thiel, Palantir, the head of Palantir, big backlash online because there has been audio leaked from him from a series of meetings that he has had, secret meeting speeches where he refers to Greta Thunberg and some others on that side of the political spectrum as being, what is he calling them? Agents of the Antichrist. He seems to have an obsession with the Antichrist. The whole thing gets weirder and weirder, but that is because we are living in the strangest of times where we have people like Peter Thiel, an architect of a technocracy and maybe even a one world government, warning us that we're about to get a one world government and some sort of everlasting authoritarian rule. So we'll highlight all of that for you tonight as well. All kinds of stuff to chat about tonight, and I hope you stay with us as we dig into today's top news stories. I'll be right back on the other side of this.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, and I know we have been freezing, and these are just part of the technical problems we've been having in the last couple of weeks, but I think I have this corrected now as well. So it should be, I hope, smooth sailing from this point on through the broadcast. If not, then I guess we'll just have to deal with it as we cross that bridge. Okay, where shall we begin tonight? I guess we'll start in the Middle East, because that is what is making really all the headlines here tonight. I personally, of course, have hope that we will be entering a new era of peace, but I am skeptical that the whole thing is going to hold together. And I think that a lot of the media coverage so far has been almost superficial, surface level, because everyone is focused on the 20-point plan from Trump and his administration. But I don't think that a 20-point plan or the 20-point plan really lays out the deal that has led to all this development, all this talk of peace, well, this ceasefire in the Middle East. And we are in phase one of that right now. It does seem to be holding, so cross your fingers. Hope that it does hold together, because a lot of people have died in Gaza. A lot of people died on October 7th. Here's Steve Witkoff at the at Hostage Square in Tel Aviv. He was there with Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump. We'll just pick up a few of these clips. Here we go.
To Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Oh. Okay. To Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Okay, let me just finish my thought. I was in the trenches, guys. Let me just finish my thought. I was in the trenches with the Prime Minister. Believe me, he was a very important part here. The Prime Minister and his staff, Ron Dermer included, have both sacrificed so much for this country and devoted their lives to the service of Israel. Their dedication to the history and destiny of this nation stands out tonight. They've given everything, their time, their energy, and their hearts, to building a safer, stronger future for the Jewish people. Their commitment to this country has never wavered, and it never will. We thank you. The President thanks you. Thank you. And to President Donald J. Trump. Thank you. Thank you.
And here's Ivanka.
The President wanted me to share, as he has with so many of you personally, that he sees you, He hears you. He stands with you. Always. Always. The return of each hostage is not only a moment of homecoming and relief, it's a triumph of faith, of courage, and of our shared humanity. The president wanted me to.
Okay, so as she is speaking and there a chants of thank you, Trump, we see Trump's political opponents over on CNN saying there's no way that he's ever going to get a Nobel Peace Prize. And some people were thinking he should get it this year. But as we saw just days ago, day before yesterday, they gave it to the opposition leader in Venezuela, who then has now dedicated the Peace Prize to Donald Trump.
There was no chance in hell he was going to get it.
Now, you don't think so?
No, you could look at a first term with the Abraham Accords if you wanted to argue it. But right now, the big moment, they already had decided and voted before the peace ceasefire between Israel and Gaza right now. So he couldn't be a beneficiary of that. But he is running for it for the following year. But nobody I've ever seen announces they deserve a Nobel over and over again. It's just seemingly unseemly if you're even a touch old school. I mean, the presidents that won it, Theodore Roosevelt for mediating the Russo-Japanese War, Woodrow Wilson, and, the end of World War I, and Barack Obama was more of an aspirational one when he won. But it makes no sense that Trump would have been on the short list this year, but he's playing it for next year. And Ms. Mercado did a smart job of flattering him to keep U.S. Venezuelan relations, from her perspective, on track.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to get it next year either. I think the Nobel Committee sent a very clear signal here. Two signals, actually. One, self-promoting yourself for the Nobel Prize doesn't work. Okay, they're not going to be bullied into it. They're not going to be shamed into it. They're going to choose what they want to choose. Two, by choosing the Venezuelan opposition leader, what they signaled is that their values are about promoting people who stand up to tyranny on behalf of democracy. Okay, that's not Trump's values. No matter what he wants to say about him making 8 peace deals, which he didn't actually even make, he does not believe that democracy and freedom and human rights promotion are the things that he wants to be about or that America should be about. He's on the other side. And even in Venezuela, he's had a very mixed policy, okay? He's engaging with Maduro, and he's killing fishermen and drug dealers. But none of that has anything to do with democratic aspirations for the people of Venezuela. So the Nobel Committee is saying we support people who are struggling for freedom and democracy and human rights against dictators. That's not Trump. So even next year, Trump's not going to be in line for that. That's my prediction.
This is the thing. It's like there are a lot of ways you can get peace. Like you can enforce peace at the end of a gun. You can have oppression and have peace. You can throw your political opponents in jail so that they can't oppose you and you have peace. What's very difficult is to have peace with freedom, where even your political opponents get to oppose you and still keep the peace, maintain peace, without exerting an excessive amount of coercion. That has been the hallmark of Western civilization and liberal democracies. And I use the word liberal in a way that most people don't understand. It's not like liberal party liberalism. I'm talking about classical liberalism with freedom of speech, freedom of expression, rule of law, that kind of liberalism, and cooperation between nations, even international law, so that it's not the law of the jungle. We're only, where might makes right. That has been the hallmark of Western civilization. What we have happening now in the Middle East, I'm not exactly sure what it is. I laid it out the other night, and in that Substack article that I wrote about this appearing to me to be some sort of hybrid technocratic populist interim government or transitional government that is being put into place that may lead to a longer term or maybe even a permanent form of governance there. Let me just bring up my notes on this. But, this whole thing in the Middle East, everyone's focused on this 20-point plan. But the 20-point plan really just lays out the steps they're taking. Like, okay, the Israeli troops move back to this line, and then these hostages get released. And it's a technical step-by-step what comes next as we roll out this phase of the deal. But this is not really the core part of the deal. So if you start to dig into it, this deal, which was put together really, what was it, September 29th, this thing came together? Anyway, it aims to end, well, this 2-year-old war between Israel and Hamas, Palestine. Of course, on October 7th, we saw about 1,200 people killed and about 251 hostages taken. Since then, I see different estimates on the number of victims in Palestine is somewhere maybe around 65 to 69,000. It seems to be the number that's out there right now. But this plan has been hailed by Trump as a path to eternal peace in the Middle East, building on his first-term Abraham Accords. But it is very controversial, and it focuses almost entirely on Gaza, with very little mention of the West Bank or broader Palestinian statehood. And this is leading critics to call this whole thing a framework that really sidelines Palestinian self-determination. So, as of tonight, Israel and Hamas have signed off on the first phase of this via indirect talks in Egypt. And this includes an immediate ceasefire, which took a hold yesterday, partial Israeli troop withdrawals, with the release of 20 living Israeli hostages in exchange for 2,000 Palestinian prisoners and detainees. Hostage releases began today, and it's continued tomorrow with full implementation tied to verification. Broader phases, demilitarization, reconstruction, and governance remain under negotiation, with Trump possibly traveling to Egypt very soon to oversee all of this. Global leaders from, and this is important, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Egypt, Qatar, United Kingdom, India, and even Russia have endorsed this, praising the first step towards stability. Although Palestinian factions like the Palestinian Authority and some Hamas allies express reservations over sovereignty. And I've seen videos online with some of these Hamas leaders saying they're never going to give up their weapons, even as this ceasefire is implemented. So this plan embodies Trump's peace through strength approach, which is, him stealing, I think, a Reagan-esque era philosophy and slogan. It demands Hamas's disarmament and exclusion from power, while offering Gaza economic incentives. Supporters see this as pragmatic, but people on the other side argue this is U.S.-Israeli dictate that perpetuates occupation by design. And if you want evidence that this ceasefire is fragile, all you have to do is look online, of course. And what we're seeing here is Hamas, some suggestions tonight with video to support, for whatever video is worth these days in terms of evidence, because we know that a lot of it can be drummed up, misrepresented, taken out of context, shown to mean something that it really doesn't mean. But this is video of what we are told are members of Hamas who are basically being put into civilian clothes. We're looking at about 7,000 Hamas members. And they've been rebranded, not Hamas, but now the Gaza Security Forces. And it's their position where they're being put into position to reestablish control over these areas where the IDF has recently withdrawn. They've appointed 5 new governors with military background, with some of them having served as commanders in the military wing of Hamas. So here, I'll show you the video. And this is what they are claiming.
تكون مكتظة بشكل كبير للغاية، لكن اللافت هو انتشار عناصر الأجهزة الأمنية التابعين لوزارة الداخلية الفلسطينية في هذه المنطقة وفي مناطق أخرى أيضا في مدينة.
And I'm sorry, I do not speak the language, so I do not know what they're saying. To be just blunt and straight up about it, but I will attribute this to Voices from the East. Is the media outlet that is publishing this. And I'll give you more from them to show that there is another perspective on all of this. Hamas is already rebranding in Gaza. Watch Hamas forces in Gaza still without uniforms controlling the population. It says here it is important to pay attention It is important to pay attention to the shift. Hamas no longer uses its name Hamas, but the name, the Security Forces of Gaza. Get used to it. Soon the world will also start calling them that and say there is no more Hamas in Gaza. Same S-H-I-T, different name. Yeah, and then Trump gets to claim that he defeated Hamas, just like ISIS. It's all optics at the end of the day. Because politics is optics. Politics is a construct. It is largely what you choose to believe. It's about opinion, emotion. And then you get policy, and then there are real world consequences, which they tend to gloss over sometimes or twist with information and psyops to make us all think other things. Do I sound like a conspiracy theorist? It isn't conspiracy theory. That is the reality. It's constant perception management. It's a constant information war. Even the Nobel Peace Prize process as we saw it unfold this year, even that, highly political. They didn't want to give it to Trump, so they gave it to the opposition. This is interesting, right? They give it to the opposition leader in Venezuela, a country that is being clearly targeted by the United States, where they're blowing up boats using the U.S. Navy with an extreme, talk about power overreach, overkill. They're blowing these boats out of the water. No due process, no arrests, no names. We don't know who these people are, but they're releasing the video. These are like snuff films from the U.S. government. Ginning up justification for any kind of militaristic action they want to take, up to and including an actual invasion of Venezuela, against Venezuela. So they give it to the opposition leader there, who is opposed to Maduro, who Trump is opposed to. She then dedicates the award to Trump, who's seen as a peace president, even as he prepares to wage war with his newly rebranded Department of War, which makes me think of George Orwell and those phrases like, everything's twisted and turned upside down, where war is peace. And I shouldn't be laughing because people are dying. And everything has become so strange that even Hillary Clinton tonight is praising Donald Trump. Who would have thought? And isn't it fortunate then that the Donald didn't throw Hillary in jail, that he didn't lock her up? Here she is over on CBS, free as a bird and praising the Donald.
It's a really significant first step, and I really commend President Trump and his administration, as well as leaders in the region, for making the commitment to the 20-point plan and seeing a path forward for what's often called the day after. Most importantly, the conflict hopefully will end with the ceasefire. The hostages will be returned. And then the very hard work of rebuilding Gaza, of finding the kind of security that Israel and the Palestinians after Hamas deserve to have, moving forward with the other points in the plan to try to create an opportunity for Palestinians to have a better life and for Israel to have greater peace and security. I am very hopeful that we'll be able to see progress. Today's a good start, but we have to keep going from here.
Yeah. Oh, man. I hope that we get peace. I do, but I see the irony in all this. I also see that this is not just about, well, you may get peace, but at what cost? That is, I think, really the larger question. What's the price being paid and who's paying it? Because there's always a cost. So we know that this 20-point plan is being executed. So we get, first up, Gaza becomes a de-radicalized terror-free zone with no threat to neighbors, redevelopment for Gazans benefit. Okay, so this is a key point, redevelopment. You get an immediate ceasefire. The IDF withdraws to these agreed lines. All 48 hostages, 20 alive, 28 deceased, released within 72 hours of Israeli acceptance. Israel releases 250 life sentence Palestinians, 1,700 detainees, plus remains of 15 Palestinians. And I'm sorry, that's actually, I'm just checking my notes here. Yeah, that's they're releasing the remains of, I'm not sure, I don't have a concrete number on that, but they have some human remains of Palestinian prisoners as well. This whole thing is just horrific. All the way around. Oh, you're a Zionist, you're on the other side. This whole thing, it's gone on far too long. The whole world is affected by it. Hamas, amnesty for those who disarm, and they can commit to peace, safe passage for others to leave. So they get to live, basically. That's what it comes down to. That's the deal for them. And then they let the aid flow through unrestricted, which we've seen, I think, both Israel restricting a lot of those aid trucks going into Palestine, and then we've seen also Hamas hijacking them to take control of the resources as they've been, and the relief as it has been coming into Palestine. I think they're both guilty of it. And then what do we get? This is what I laid out the other night, this temporary technocratic Palestinian governance overseen by a board of peace, which is chaired by, you guessed it, Donald J. Trump. And they're going to inject all these funds to rebuild Gaza until a reformed Palestinian Authority is able to take over. And this expert panel creates Trump Economic Development Plan. Are you starting to get the picture? Remember I was saying we were talking about the Riviera of the Middle East? You notice how they're not really talking about that right now? But that's really at the core of this whole thing, which seemed completely ridiculous, grotesque, entirely exploitive. And yet really at the heart of all this, that is what we're getting. At the core of this thing, the deal, well, it's a phased bargain, leveraging U.S. pressure on both sides. Hamas gets survival. So if you're a Hamas member, they're not going to kill you once this whole thing comes to an end. The fighters get exile or amnesty. And then they get jobs and aid in exchange for total capitulation on power and weapons. Although we're seeing some say we're never going to give up our weapons. And then Israel gets security guarantees, a demilitarized Gaza with no threat, without full occupation. And the behind the scenes incentives include, for Hamas and the Palestinians, an immediate end to the war, massive aid rebuild, at least 50 billion, probably way more than that, estimated by the Trump administration. And then they get an economic boom via, that's right, the Riviera of the Middle East. And Trump's vision takes hold, may become a reality there with hotels, tech hubs in special zones, tech hubs, take note, technocracy, the ideology we've laid out. And then I talked about it the other night. This is almost like an experiment in technocratic rule with a globalist oversight. No forced expulsions, as we had been concerned about and had been spoken about, and a nod to eventual statehood, possibly, though conditional on PA reforms like anti-corruption. And is it really statehood, or would the PA just be a puppet government? Yes, I think so. A puppet of those who end up owning the Riviera of the Middle East. Arab states, Saudi, UAE, Egypt, Qatar provide guarantees and funding, pressuring Hamas to comply because they have been outside influences through all of this. There's been so much corruption with all of the aid that goes into the Middle East. And now they get to invest. So I think what's really bringing about peace from the aerial view as a naive little Kanakistanian here in Canada, I just see really rich people, especially from the Middle East, who are close to what's been going on over there and involved in the management of the status quo in the Middle East for all these years. Many of them, I think, probably profiting through corruption and skimming money off the top as the aid flows. And you see these people flying around in jets, and it's very odd because these are supposed to be, you know, the disenfranchised, the poorest of the poor, representing people who are oppressed in the Middle East, and yet they're living in Qatar or some other place, you know, outside of Palestine, living the high life, right? And now I think these same players have been offered a deal to invest in Trump's Riviera of the Middle East. So it's a transactional thing. Again, at the core of it, for Israel, all the hostages come home. So everybody's cheering for that because they're so tired of this war and they want the hostages back so badly that, of course, they're like going to cheer for any peace at any price at this point because it's been so terrible. And then they get Hamas dismantled. The tunnels will be gone. Fighters disarmed, exiled, blah, blah, blah. It's all U.S. backed for long-term security. And the IDF pulls out but retains border oversight until the area is secure. But then you get this governance in there where, of course, now you have people with an investment and a vested interest, therefore, in keeping everything stable and maintaining the peace. Instead, it's because they don't want their hotels blown up. But what of the people? How will this impact the Palestinians? And does this actually lead to, okay, it may lead to peace, but does it lead to any kind of freedom? Not necessarily. It may just lead to a new kind of oppression, or oppression in a new form, or oppression maybe even masked over and veiled. I guess all the Palestinians get to go to work in the hotels, which would be a much better thing than, I guess, living under constant threat of being shelled. Trump chairs the oversight board, positioning himself as the architect. I mean, he's even floated this Trump Gaza as like branding. And this expands the Abraham Accords by involving more Arab buy-in, potentially normalizing Saudi-Israeli ties. And then the enforcement comes from the U.S., verifying compliance. If Hamas balks, Israel resumes ops with U.S. support. And the peace mechanism, security first, prosperity second, politics last. Yeah, you gotta bring in peace so that then you can bring in the investment to build the Riviera of the Middle East. And then the politics, that's all tertiary. Who even cares at that point, as long as you're all making money? Demilitarize Gaza, get all the weapons and all the war making machinery out of there. That builds trust. From that trust, you've got, oceanfront property. Investment can then flow in, guarantees of stability from the United States. Nobody's going to mess in here because we're so powerful. We'll make sure that there's no more bombing. Your investment will be safe. And maybe that's the only path to peace. It's a unique approach, but it's an approach that I don't think many people even are recognizing tonight. It's all about the money, baby. At what price? At what price? We've talked so long, so many have, about a two-state solution, about Palestinian sovereignty, a nation state for Palestine. We just saw Macron, Starmer, Mark Carney, all recognize Palestine as a state. And then we saw Marco Rubio come out yesterday, I think it was, and criticize Macron and the others for undermining the peace process by recognizing Palestine as a state, saying it was the wrong approach and it was a mistake for them to do it. And that actually fits in very nicely, the criticism of those world leaders with what I've been talking about all the way along, which is this new, it's a new world order. They talk about it at the St. Petersburg Economic Forum. All the BRICS nations use that phrase, new world order. And everybody over here is so focused all the time on the World Economic Forum, the World Health Organization. This is a shell game. And this is, the eye is off the ball over here. The new world order is right in front of you. It's Trump's new world order, but it isn't just his. It's also Putin's. It's also Xi Jinping. Even though Trump is at odds with both of those countries, it doesn't mean they're not working together. And even just in 1984 with, with Orwell, right? Each nation has to have an adversary. For Trump right now, it's China. And we're seeing this conflict, this ongoing tug of war, China, because it's what he has done is he's reframed the battlefield, repositioned everything. It isn't conventional warfare. This is fifth generation warfare. The enemy is no longer just a nation state. It's not one country against another. It's actually a war on liberalism. And on the one side, it is no longer communism versus fascism. It's communofascism or neo-Eurasianism. It depends on which phrase or brand or title you want to put on it. But this is communism and fascism fusing together to create this new hybrid political ideology that embraces traditional values, the same kind of authoritarianism that we see today in Russia and is now being laid out in the United States, where the Trump administration, as you're seeing, is purging political enemies, exerting an authoritarian form of control over the government by defeating the deep state. But the war is not now communism versus fascism. Those ideologies they're trying to bring them together under the brand of populism, or the ideological brand of populism. And the war is being waged against liberalism, or more specifically, progressivism, LGBTQS+, wokeism, anything woke. That's what they're at war with, so that it becomes an emotional war. This is how they defeat liberalism. And at the heart of all of that as well, democracy. And so while you have elections, it's not really a true democracy, because there's authoritarianism that comes into play, and these democracies are actually very much controlled using a variety of mechanisms, including information warfare, which is at the very heart of all of this, in order to make you think in particular ways, or make all of us think, and so that we're all manipulated and We cheer for certain things and vote in a particular way, and we have become very emotional and opposed to other things. And sometimes things don't even make sense, like the ostrich farm, which is off the rails. And I hope you're following me because it is all crazy. And if you, after a while, you do start to sound crazy because a lot of people just don't follow things closely enough, and they're still stuck in the old way of viewing things, or a previous way, and so they're not even aware of what is going on. Are you awake? I hate to use these phrases, these terms, because they sound so conspiratorial. And yet to me, it's clear as day. Duginism, neo-Eurasianism, communofascism versus liberalism. And that's why he's so opposed to what's going on in Venezuela to Trump, because he is a populist living or trying to play out this ideological war within the U.S. framework, as the world is carved up into these spheres of geopolitical dominance. The West, Monroe Doctrine being enforced basically this way. Trump's going to take control of everything if this is the way it ultimately happens, from that part of, Panama to Greenland, Venezuela, Caribbean, all Canada, 51st state. One big economic union, but not just an economic union, one big, giant, united states, either through puppet regimes or straight up sovereign control, but through annexation. And who's going to stand in the way? Who's got the firepower? Well, we've seen giant powers in places like Afghanistan have real trouble in the past. Things may not go in the long run the way that our peace president and Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping think. Sometimes a small force can put together a pretty effective resistance, and I hope it doesn't come to these things, because these kinds of wars get very, very bloody and messy, and this is what is leading to World War III, folks. You think that they were really talking about Ukraine when Putin and Trump met in Alaska? Talking about more than just Ukraine. It's like, okay, Vladimir, I'll stay out of your way if you stay out of mine. We're going to sell weapons to these guys, but we're not putting boots on the ground there. Okay, thanks, Trump. We'll stay out of your way and down in Venezuela. Even if they call for help, we won't send in troops because we don't want a nuclear conflict. Theory, informed through empirical evidence. And then all this stuff in the Middle East. Will it hold? It's a novel approach using economic tools, financial tools, promises of big payoffs on an investment in the Middle East, and offering these opportunities to the people, the external players who have really been pulling strings all these years, saying, hey, you know what, let's just stop blowing everything up. Now that it's completely demolished, you don't have to pay to blow up the buildings. That's all taken care of. We'll just bulldoze the whole thing, and you guys can come in and invest. We'll make sure that there's no uprising at all, and we'll build the Riviera of the Middle East. We'll all get to go on great vacations there together, and it'll be our playground, and we'll all make a crap load of money. Not a bad idea. Cue the crowd. Thank you, Trump. Yeah. But, there are some problems because Hamas is still resisting full disarmament without ironclad Israeli withdrawal. Israel wants permanent buffers, and phase 2 talks could falter. And we're seeing, even tonight, ongoing conflict in Lebanon. And Trump's board gives him outsized control. Some see that as colonial. And critics are calling this whole thing a farce. That really, this 20-point plan, this whole thing from Trump, just enables annexation of Palestine and Gaza in order to realize the Riviera of the Middle East. And we've seen past ceasefires collapse, like the January 2025 deal, 67,000 Gazan deaths and Gaza in ruins. Aid distribution still has to happen, and somehow they have to try to avoid corruption with that, with people skimming it off the top or taking control of it. And then we have broader Iran-Hezbollah tensions, and all of that could derail things too, because Iran is still a major player over there. Trump has not really destroyed Iran's capability of producing a nuclear weapon, and Iran is aligned with China and Russia. And that is also very destabilizing, because there's an old saying, even as Hillary Clinton and Condi Rice call this tonight a significant first step, and seem to be, in a way, almost bending the knees as they praise Trump. There's an old saying: there's no honor among thieves. I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Greetings, brave mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Don't worry, I'll talk about the ostriches in a little bit. It's coming. Well, Rick, what's going on with the ostriches? They're still there. The whole controversy, the whole of it's all still there. But first we have to talk about Peter Thiel. As if things weren't weird enough. Just, have you ever met really rich people? Do you know any really rich people? Some of them are cool. Some of them are pretty eccentric because they don't live in our world at all. Not the impoverished like me. They are just a different breed, and I can't imagine what it's like to be an Elon Musk or a Peter Thiel. Billionaires. I think Musk is on track to become a trillionaire. It's just disgustingly. It's just, wow, the amount of money. Who would have thought? I never thought that I'd see the day where, somebody had made enough money to buy their own spaceship. like this is happening. Not only a spaceship, but Jeff Bezos has the world's largest flying dildo. Like he does. It looks just like that. Like you talk about a midlife crisis. This is what's going on. But Peter Thiel, less well known than these other guys, but still becoming better known, especially tonight, because he's been delivering a series of secretive lectures in San Francisco titled The Antichrist, a 4-part lecture series. And according to leaked audio obtained by the Washington Post and The Guardian, this libertarian mega donor, who describes himself as a small O Orthodox Christian, has been telling sold out crowds that limiting technological development could destroy America, invite totalitarianism, and harm business. And he's tying it all to the biblical Antichrist. Now, he's even gone so far as to reportedly suggest that the Antichrist could be figures like, it could be, who the hell knows, 22-year-old climate activist Greta Thunberg, or AI critic Eliezer Yudkowsky, calling them both modern Luddites who want to halt scientific progress. Do you know what Luddites were? They're just people who, were against progress, basically. You can look it up. I don't want to get into all the history. Anyway, the Luddites are people who just won't let go of the past. They're opposed to technology. There have been different groups like that through history. But progress is inevitable. It's very difficult to stand in the way of anything like that. All this AI stuff, I don't think that there's any stopping it at this point. Anyway, Thiel has contrasted both of them with 17th century evil scientists claiming today's Antichrist gains power by stoking fears of global catastrophe. I see these paranoid, somewhat realistic fears all through the the freedom movement. Some of it justified, some of it grossly exaggerated to the point where it drives people insane. And I think that's by design too, because that's part of the information war, where they're feeding you information, feeding all of us information in ways really designed to drive us crazy so that it keeps us off center, off balance, so they can do whatever they kind of want. Who's they? Well, it's people like Peter Thiel. He's also taken shots at his own tech peers, dismissing Bill Gates in these speeches as Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, who lacks the charisma to be the Antichrist, and accusing venture capitalist Mark Anderson of spouting Silicon Valley propaganda. Meanwhile, he's praising Elon Musk and expressed support for Vice President J.D. Vance, though he worries that Vance might be too close to the Pope. And as weird as all this stuff sounds, there are seeds of truth in all of this. And it just goes to show you, I think really what this really does show is that after a while, you spin up stories, even falsehoods, and you tell them long enough to enough people and disperse it widely enough, people begin to believe it. It begins to come true just through sheer will of force and the effect and the grapevine effect, and it eventually finds its way even back to you and affects your brain so that your perspective on reality is skewed, or maybe it really does just completely reshape reality. In ways that are just, well, I don't know. I don't know. I don't even know how to describe that. It's all new because of social media. What is it? It's schizophrenic. A schizophrenic society is kind of what we're ending up with here. Right here, Shaquille posting, whoever this is. He actually called Yudkowsky the Antichrist. Incredible. In the 17th, 18th century, this is a quote from Peter Thiel, the Antichrist would have been a Dr. Strangelove, a scientist who did this sort of evil, crazy science, Thiel said in his September 15th opening talk, according to the recordings. In the 21st century, the Antichrist is a Luddite who wants to stop all science. It's someone like Greta or Eliezer, he said, referring to Thunberg and Eliezer Yudkowsky, a prominent critic of the tech industry's approach to AI. So Yudkowsky is a writer, a researcher, an advocate known for his work on artificial intelligence, safety, and rationality. He co-founded the Machine Intelligence Research Institute, or MIRI, a nonprofit that focuses on ensuring safe and interpretable AI systems. Yudkowsky He's a prominent figure in the AI safety community, often emphasizing the risks of advanced AI and the need for robust alignment with human values. He's pretty well known for popularizing concepts like friendly AI and writing extensively on rational thinking. He has a blog series called Less Wrong, where he explores decision theory, cognitive biases, and epistemology. Additionally, he also authored Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality, pretty popular fan fiction that applies rationalist principles to the Harry Potter universe. I'm not a big Harry Potter fan. I wish maybe I should read the books. I hate the movies. So maybe I'm at a disadvantage here. Anyway, his work blends technical AI research with accessible writing in order to raise awareness about the existential risks from AI. And indeed, I see that. And of course, we have a lot of AI Luddites out there because everybody's afraid of losing their jobs, being replaced by Chat GPT or or Grok. Even if you're a lawyer in these white collar positions, hey, maybe even replace the president or the king. Who needs him? Just let AI run everything. Once we get artificial general intelligence, it will be able to rationally think and reason things out using even the scientific method to reach good decisions, possibly, maybe. What a concept. You just look at what's going on online tonight with regard to this. Thiel's getting backlash on this. And yet, the strange thing is, I think that he's sounding the alarm bell on his own, on the other side of things. A lot of people are saying, we're worried about losing our jobs. AI could destroy us. It'll be just like Terminator with these AI-controlled weapons systems. Valid concerns. On the other side, we need, I think, AI to create new economies of scale through unprecedented levels of productive efficiency through our industrial sectors, replacing a lot of human tasks with robots that can do repetitive functions over and over and over and over and over again with unprecedented precision and without taking a break, so that things can be produced on a scale far exceeding what we've been able to achieve with assembly lines and just-in-time delivery, all of which are still dependent on human interaction, human involvement. And if we can achieve those levels of efficiency and productivity, we can inject more and more value into the economy and therefore even grow our way economically out of debt. Probably much faster than anyone could ever imagine. But then we have to find ways to keep people occupied or maybe even employed with and keep them engaged in society in a way that is not just passive, where people may just give up hope and become depressed simply because they may have income and they may be sustained with food and clothing and shelter, but maybe don't find any meaning in life anymore, or very little meaning, because all they have time for is leisure. And in leisure itself, there is not necessarily meaning or even a sense of pride in achieving something. You lose your drive if all you're doing is going down to the pool every day and sipping a margarita. We're entering a new phase for humanity, maybe even a transhuman phase, which combines digital technology, robotics, human biological life forms, jacking into the internet, digital knowledge, artificial intelligence, maybe a collective mind like the Borg. Don't know where it's all going. Many ethical questions to be answered here. Peter Thiel tapping into all of that. And all you have to do is look at the level of not just concern, but I would say confusion and uncertainty. It's on full display on X as we scroll down and do a Twitter scroll, X scroll. Peter Thiel confronted on Palantir, Jeffrey Epstein and the Big Brother surveillance system. This is back in June.
Mr. Thiel, do you have any comments about Palantir's surveillance of the American people, sir? Or any of your connections to Jeffrey Epstein? I think people are rather concerned about that last particular one. You're setting up a Big Brother surveillance system, and people know it, sir. Do you think the American people want this surveillance tech being used against them? Any comments at all on the Epstein connections? You were meeting with them.
And make no mistake, Thiel tied right into the military.
People are waking up to what you're doing there, sir. That's why we're here covering this.
Which just throws fuel on the fire of every kind of speculation. Okay, so scroll down. So here we are, back in July. James Lee.
Everybody's talking about Jeffrey Epstein right now. The list, who was on the jet, the island, his ties to intelligence, how he died, if he's even dead. But almost no one is talking about the billionaire who is basically, I think, Epstein 2.0. And the person I'm referring to is, of course, Peter Thiel.
You would prefer the human race to endure, right? You're hesitating.
Yeah, well,
yes?
I don't know. I would
this is a long hesitation. This is a long hesitation.
There's so many questions implicit
in this. Should the human race survive?
Yes, the guy who is not so sure whether or not humans should exist. Now, some background on Thiel. He was the co-founder of PayPal alongside Elon Musk. He was also the first major investor in Facebook. Coincidentally, I don't know if you know this, founded on the same day DARPA ended their LifeLog program, which was a program.
Yeah.
My very specific question for you, right, is that you're an investor in AI. You're deeply invested in Palantir, in military technology, in technologies of surveillance, in technologies of warfare, and so on, right? And it just seems to me that when you tell me a story about the Antichrist coming to power and using the fear of technological change to sort of impose order on the world, I feel like that Antichrist would maybe be using the tools that you were building, right? Like, wouldn't the Antichrist be like, great, we're not going to have any more technological progress, but I really like what Palantir has done so far, right?
Yeah,
I mean, isn't that a concern? Wouldn't that be the irony of history would be that the man publicly worrying about the Antichrist accidentally hastens his or her arrival?
There are all these different scenarios. I obviously don't think that that's what I'm doing.
I mean, to be clear, I don't think that's what you're doing either. I'm just interested in how you get to a world willing to submit to permanent authoritarian rule.
Well, but again, there are these different gradations of this we can describe. But is this so preposterous, what I've just told you, as a broad account of the stagnation that the entire world has submitted for 50 years to peace and safetyism? This is 1 Thessalonians 5:3. The slogan of the Antichrist is peace and safety, and we've submitted.
What else do we have here? It's just okay. The Antichrist lectures with Peter Thiel. let me show you this one. This is I only want to show you this because it's a great image, which is obviously AI generated, of Greta Thunberg. Where'd she go? There we go. Greta, wearing oil, I guess. Leaked audio obtained by the Washington Post reveals tech billionaire Peter Thiel calling Greta Thunberg and AI critics legionnaires of the Antichrist. So what he's saying is that if you stand in the way of this AI technology, you could actually end up holding humanity back, maybe even destroying humanity. Because we need the technology in order to survive into the future. What are your thoughts? I'm going to look in the chat here, take a little break, give you guys a moment to populate your comments, and I'll start perusing those on the other side, and then we'll probably dip into the ostrich thing. Stay with me. I'll be right back.
Maverick News. Fighting for freedom.
Here. Yeah, it isn't just the Washington Post or the Guardian. This story has been circulating for a while. This is on Wired. There's another article on, what is it called? Futurist. Anyway, the real stakes, the real story of Peter Thiel's Antichrist obsession. 30 years ago, a peace-loving Austrian theologian spoke to Peter Thiel about the apocalyptic theories of Nazi jurist Carl Schmitt. Unitary executive power. They've been a roadmap for the billionaire ever since. Peter Thiel's Armageddon speaking tour has, like the world, not ended yet. For a full 2 years now, the billionaire has been on the circuit spreading his biblically inflected ideas about doomsday through a set of variably and sometimes visibly perplexed interviewers. He has chatted on stage with Economist podcaster Tyler Cowen about the Katechin. What is that? The Katechin? I don't even know what that is. The scriptural term for that which withholds the end times. Okay. The Katechin? I have to admit, I am not that familiar with the scripture. Traded some very awkward on-camera silences with the New York Times columnist Ross Douthat, and is at the very moment in the midst of delivering a 4-part off-the-record lecture series about the Antichrist in San Francisco. As we highlighted, I'm just going to look over on Rumble. Anybody in there saying anything about this? Be lovely. Saying, is there a time frame to the 20-point plan? We survived. Oh, here it is. Be lovely says, we've survived without the technology for thousands of years. We do not have to have it, in my opinion. I suppose not. But it would certainly set us back in terms of our ability to interact with the rest of the world moving into the future. And that would affect our level of prosperity. Maybe some might say in a good way. I guess we could all become, more like the Amish or Mennonites, or you pick your group or your example. It's all about choices. All about choices. All right, let's move on, shall we? I don't want to dig too deep into this ostrich stuff because it's, before we get to that, just one other thing. Just something to take note of here. This is something I've been saying for a while as well. As people kick me and pound on me because of my positions, as loose as they are, and always open to change, because I'm always open to new information. My position on Ukraine, Russia, which evolved over time because I could see certain influencers just straight up lying, which is why the war was not over in a matter of a week or two or a month or two, but we're now into, 4 years of this? And as I laid out the other side of the story, showing that it isn't just, you can look at it in the way that Professor Mearsheimer portrays it, or Jeffrey Sachs or Vladimir Putin, and say that it's all because of NATO encroachment pushing up against Russian borders, and say that that's why Russia was justified in going into Ukraine, first taking over Crimea, and then later the full-scale invasion 4 years ago, which is why some people are very confused and say that Ukraine invaded Russia. No, not true at all. Russia invaded Ukraine. But that's all part of the mind game to get you confused. And if you're not really familiar enough, you begin to believe things that just simply are not true. In any event, I told you about the civil war that was really, I think, fueled by separatists and Russian support for the separatist movements, largely the Russian-speaking populations in some sections of Ukraine. And they were supported by what they called at the time, the earlier days, little green men. Soldiers that went in with no insignia. You couldn't tell where they were from, but it became known pretty widely, and then became public and even admitted later by Russia, because that they were Russian soldiers, and they're supporting the separatists, the Russian-speaking, have more Russian-speaking populations that were moved in there, when the Soviets pushed the Nazis out, and the history is all there. That's why you had so many Russian speakers there. Over time, Russian diaspora forming within Ukraine. In any event, the little green men were there, and that is part of that's what enabled the separatists to really dig in and push the separatist civil war, essentially, which was really, I think, something of a manufactured crisis within Ukraine in order to justify the full-scale invasion. And Putin has said that he needed to go in there, he said, to protect those people, the Russian-speaking population, because Ukrainian is the language of Ukraine. But in any event, back to this. So now what we're seeing, I just highlight this because we are seeing now in Estonia, near Estonia, right on the border, a NATO member, which borders Russia, they've now spotted armed, unidentified Russian troops, basically using the same playbook that Moscow used in order to go into Crimea. These little green men appearing again, unmarked soldiers operating without insignia and operating under the direction of the Kremlin. So NATO is aware of this. And with Ukraine still in the midst of a serious, very serious war, as you know, where we've seen far more people die in Ukraine, both from Russia's side and the Ukrainian side, than we've even seen in Gaza. And Ukraine's still under attack. It's Russia is poking NATO at this point again, using this same strategy, because these little green men showing up on the border of Estonia.
Suurema üksuse liikumist. Politsei ja Piirivalveamet jagas meediale ka videot, kus on näha 7 relvastatud meest tee peal seismas. Politsei sõnul on eesmärk hoida ära võimalikke provokatsioone ja vahejuhtumeid ning tagada Eesti inimeste turvalisus. Suurema üksuse
So I'd say it's not looking good. And so again, you have the peace president wants the Nobel Peace Prize in the worst way, promoting himself for it, claiming to stop all these wars, and yet even it's like we're getting new wars to replace the old wars, or new versions of wars to replace old wars, or expanded wars to replace the old wars that he claims to be stopping. I don't see the world as a more peaceful place, because even as we see Trump trying to say that he's bringing peace to the world, we've never been closer to a third world war, or so it seems. Sending Tomahawk missiles, or approving them now for Ukraine. Vladimir Putin saying this is going to essentially lead to the end of relations between Russia and the United States. He's pushing Canada as the 51st state. He still hasn't given up on Greenland. He's already exerted economic control again over Panama, essentially taking control of it through economic means. He's using the financial might of the United States as a giant bludgeoning hammer to get what he wants around the world through these tariff exercises and trade wars with all of the U.S. traditional allies, turning the military-industrial complex pretty much into a profit machine, selling the weapons to Europe. And I wonder how much support there ultimately might be if this thing does expand and blow up in Europe into a full-blown conflict between NATO and Russia. We're seeing all of the European countries express concern, not just about a further expansion of aggression from Russia into other European countries and NATO countries like Estonia. We've seen the drone flights over, Poland, Romania. But what's going to happen? Will the United States be there in the end, or disengage? Will the weapons even continue to flow? Where will that leave Europe? I don't know. This is so unstable, so unpredictable. It, I think, is one of the main things that risks plunging us into a third world war and an economic worldwide depression too, because the economy hinges on all of this stuff and confidence. And with all of this, we're getting uncertainty. I haven't seen so much pullback on the economy since about 2008. Talking about weirdness, let's talk about the ostriches briefly here. So, just a few things. It's quiet out there, I think, this weekend for the most part. The CFIA, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, they're not going to cull those birds this weekend, Thanksgiving weekend. They don't have a decision from the Supreme Court yet on whether the appeal on whether to cull the ostrich flock out there will proceed. Even though I think the stay, the court-ordered stay has expired, I don't think the CFIA would dare touch the birds until they get the ruling from the Supreme Court. That, I think, is probably not likely to happen until at least next Thursday, which is the day normally those decisions come down, but it could come down sooner than that, Tuesday or Wednesday. Most likely Thursday. Keep your eye on that one. But all quiet on the ostrich front, pretty much on the farm side and the CFIA side, where the standoff out there continues. And I don't know how much, you viewers have been following what we have been doing here, but a lot of information flowing out of there, we've shown, has not been factual. There hasn't been real transparency. There hasn't been real honesty, for sure. It is in itself an information war. Something of a psyop, I would say. And I still have lingering questions. Because even though they make all these claims, these ostriches have antibodies. They just keep repeating this over and over again, that these birds have high scientific value because they've been used for research, which strangely a lot of the freedom-oriented people out there seem to be okay with, even though we've shown that they've been injected over and over and over again with some sort of COVID antigen in order to induce an artificial immune response so that the birds were producing COVID antibodies present in their eggs, we are told. The other thing is they keep saying that they have this extreme value because they survived H5N1 avian flu. And they have herd immunity, they claim. And yet, through these claims, they keep losing in court because when they go to make these arguments, they keep losing. And so, even tonight, as I sit here, and I'm actually tired of even putting forth any attempt at rational discussion or argument with anybody from out there or anybody who's on the ostrich wagon, because they just dismiss it. They're not really interested in truth. They're just repeating talking points that are largely not even supported through any kind of evidence. And then it just occurred to me to just simply ask a few simple questions tonight again. And this one's pretty important. One question is, where are the studies? They claim that these birds have scientific value. Where are the studies to support that? Show me. Not the COVID side, the bird flu side. What studies have they actually done? Because as far as I can see, they haven't actually done any studies on bird flu at that farm on those ostriches. They're simply making a claim, not supported with any kind of evidence, no studies at all, not even one that I'm aware of. And the other thing that makes this suspect to me is because I know that studies on bird flu and ostriches and antibodies have been done, but not at that farm. You can go back to, I think it's 1990, 1991, and I have found studies done by other scientists at other facilities, proper research facilities, into that field, into that area. Pub Health has the actual studies published online. You can find them. I have. I know they're out there. But I haven't seen a single page of any kind of study on bird flu from that farm. Show me. Show me the studies done on those birds on H5N1 to support these claims that they have herd immunity, that they won't get sick again if exposed to a bird flu virus, either the same one or a new version thereof, that they're immune to bird flu now. They're immune? Are they? They have herd immunity? So they can't get sick from bird flu anymore. If they're exposed, they won't get sick. Prove it. I'd say at this point, the onus is on them, as it was in court, to produce your evidence, because they're making this claim as a defense. Show us the evidence. Nothing. They have nothing. They won't produce that paper because they don't have it. Not on the bird flu side, but they were doing studies on COVID antibodies. I'm not even sure, though, if they actually have any studies related to that, because the actual research was being done in Japan, not at the farm. They were cashing in on the COVID mania by injecting the birds with these COVID antigens in order to get the birds to produce eggs that apparently had antibodies in them. But I don't think they have any actual valid scientific studies to show, which is, again, why they keep losing. But it isn't about the COVID research, not the cull. The cull is the exposure to the bird flu. I'm concerned about the COVID research because I don't think it was done properly. I don't see any evidence that it was. Certainly, that facility out there, that farm, is not properly equipped for any kind of scientific studies. The bird's exposed to wildlife, external factors. It's not a controlled environment. How do you conduct a scientific experiment if you're not controlling the conditions so that you can be sure that you're not getting external factors coming in and polluting the data that you get back? And you end up with an improper conclusion. They don't even know what they're injecting into those birds, to be quite frank. And I can illustrate that for you here tonight. So what they're doing out there is they are engaging in mind games. When somebody says something that doesn't quite fit the narrative or is inconvenient, even if it's truth, they dismiss it. Case in point, what were those birds injected with? We've shown you on this program repeatedly different versions of information with regard to that. Jim Kerr, Papa Bubbles, the protest clown, who's out there, sort of at the center of the whole circus as part of their social media management team, information management team. He was coming out for a while saying these birds weren't injected with anything. There were actual animated, semi-animated videos produced, informational videos, also stating the same thing. These birds weren't injected with anything. Even though we had Karen Esperson and Katie Pasitny both on the program saying that the birds were injected with COVID antigens. And yet that seemed to be inconvenient for people because people became concerned about it. So they had some of their information management team spin up videos saying, oh, don't worry about it. They weren't actually injected with anything. And then even I called Jim Kerr out on it when he popped on. And I said, why are you lying to people? Why are you telling people that these birds weren't injected with anything? Well, because they weren't. Yes, they were, because we just had Katie on and she just said that they were injected with COVID antigens. And he said, oh, well, then I guess maybe I was mistaken. No, he knew. He was lying about it in order to strengthen the narrative that the farm was putting out so that they could generate more sympathy, because they knew that some people would have concerns about not just the safety of what they were doing with regard to the COVID studies out there with those birds, but also with the way the birds were being treated, repeatedly injected over and over again, used as lab animals in an open air biolab. Yeah, I have concerns about lab animals. I want to make sure that they're treated humanely. And what is that doing to these poor birds? Their immune systems. This is not natural. This is the other claim they're making. This is all natural. That's why Big Pharma wants to shut us down, because they don't want a natural solution. They were working with Big Pharma. They stated clearly that one of the main reasons they were doing the COVID research was because they were hoping that the antibodies produced by the birds and present in the eggs might be used to develop a new vaccine for bird flu, for COVID. And yet they're now saying, oh, this is because these birds produce natural antibodies. Well, yeah, maybe for the bird flu, maybe, but you don't have any studies to substantiate any of that. And your birds have been used for prior research, so it doesn't make them a good candidate for ongoing research for other things. Because now, you see, to understand the results, you have birds that have been injected with COVID antigens. Is that having some impact on their ability to survive, or maybe to even make them susceptible to contracting a bird flu virus because their immune systems have either been bolstered or that they're not as strong anymore? These are factors. And yet they're saying now some people have latched on to information saying that the birds were injected. The antigen was a spike protein from the COVID virus, which in itself, some people, we don't even really know still to this day for sure where it came from, whether it was entirely naturally occurring or if it was manipulated in a lab someplace. We just don't know, because even though you're getting this information from government, including the Trump administration now, and even before, where he kept saying it's, comes from China, came from China. Who's really responsible for it? Is China really responsible for it? Or was it some sort of a multinational project? We know that the Wuhan lab was receiving funding from multiple nations, not just China, including funding from the United States. So what's the truth behind it all? Probably never really know. But is the COVID virus itself even natural? I don't think any of this is natural in terms of the research they've been doing out of the farm or the production of certainly the COVID antibodies. There's nothing natural about that in those birds. And the persistent change, I'm going to call them lies, because it becomes inconvenient when some of this truth comes out. So here's Katie Pasitny and her mom. This was just days ago, saying, oh, no, these birds were not injected with spike protein. I think actually I'm not sure exactly who put this up the first time, but anyway, here it is. I'm not sure exactly who to accredit this to, but this was, I think, multi-streamed by several people.
Shot to build more amazing antibodies and put them in eggs.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We just need the proof. Yeah. And that antigen is not spike protein. This is going around. We don't administer spiked protein to our animals. That is a big one with this, like Nagasi and all these people.
An antigen is one protein out of a complete sequence, genome sequencing, which means it cannot be infectious, it cannot be contagious.
Okay, they don't know. They're not scientists. And I've looked it up. If you're involved in any kind of experimentation using any element or any portion of a COVID spike protein, if you're doing any kind of work like that, there are rules that you are supposed to follow, biosecurity rules, including for the people who are administering the injections. They have to have certain clothing on. You're not supposed to get it on your skin. Were they following those rules out there? Was it a spike protein? Wasn't it a spike protein? Well, let's go to the guy that they brought into court, the guy that they put on this program, the doctor who they say is the expert, who they put forward as a friendly witness in court, Dr. Stephen Pellick. Is it a spike protein or wasn't it a spike protein?
Talking to David and going over materials that the farm has actually put together with their business plan, and seeing what little information I can get from the biotech partner that they were dealing with, which has since been taken over by another company, it would appear to me that what was being injected into these birds was likely the spike protein itself. So it's a protein. It's one of the proteins found in the virus on the...
I don't know what more you have to hear. like they keep changing the story. And people are believing them. It's like it's a bloody psyop in a lot of ways. They literally had the people out of the farm standing down in a group. They go up in a scissor lift with their cameras, and they get them to chant, "Repeat after me. Ostriches are not poultry. Ostriches are not poultry." Yes, they are. They're classified as poultry. I'll show you again. That one drives me crazy because, like zombies, sheep being led to the slaughter, they're like the people just repeated it over and over again. This is what they're trying to convince people of. So they will reclassify the birds. I'll just type it into Google. Are ostriches considered poultry? That's the question. The answer comes back, and I will show you again tonight. There's the answer. Yes, ostriches are considered poultry in a legal and agricultural context because they are domesticated birds raised for meat, eggs, and feathers. While they have red meat, which differs from the white meat of traditional poultry, this culinary distinction does not change their classification as domestic poultry by government agencies like the USDA and CFIA. They are poultry. But I guess if you just want to change people's reality, redefine things, just say 2 + 2 = 5 and live in an Orwellian nightmare, then I guess ostriches aren't poultry anymore. Or it's not the Gulf of Mexico anymore. It's the Gulf of America. You just decide. Don't have to consult with anyone. They'll decide. Other questions? Okay, show me the study. Just show me the studies that they've done on those birds on bird flu. And show me the valid science behind it all to show us that those birds are special, that they are immune to bird flu. Prove it. The onus at this point, and as far as I'm concerned, is on them because they've had their days in court. They may still get another day or two in court at the Supreme Court level, but I doubt it because nothing they have done has produced any evidence of any kind to support that claim that they just keep repeating over and over and over again, which is leading to a verdict in the court of public opinion where people are lining up to support the farm based on a claim that is not supported. There's no proof of that. That is what is driving me crazy more than anything else. And I don't really want the birds to die. Nobody wants death. But I do want bloody truth. And I've said so many times sitting in this chair, especially since resurrecting this news platform at the height of the pandemic and the Freedom Convoy, like, why do you have to lie? The truth is bad enough. Just tell the truth. But no, they can't do that because it's way more effective. I think it generates more in donations. It generates more in clicks. It generates more sympathy. But the problem with that approach is that on the other side, after you're done tearing down the safety protocols, after you're done tearing down everything, what are we going to get on the other side? I still don't know. They say it's going to be better, but they're not giving us a plan. And then here's the other question that I continue to ask tonight. Where are the baby birds? Still don't have an answer. Still working on that one. It's, I think, beginning. It's a question that's resonating now with some other people who are now like, yeah, come to think of it, I've never seen any baby ostriches out there. I haven't seen any in any videos at any time. And yet, they've highlighted videos showing the birds fornicating, engaging in ostrich porn in the open air biolab. And they laugh about it when they're making the videos and, oh my goodness, and isn't that beautiful? Or ha, 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 look at the birds getting frisky in the pen. Well, if they're fornicating that much, those birds fornicate more than rabbits. And I don't see any babies anywhere. So I know there can only be a few answers to that question. Some of them could be, all of them, pretty illogical. I'm certain that if I actually speak to someone from the farm, they will probably lie. So I'm not trusting that at this point. We'll get to that though. But I have to ask, where are the babies? And why are we missing so many birds? I've seen now also in the last day videos from some of the influencers out there saying, we want a head count. And Katie Pasitny, we want a head count. They even, I think, kind of duped the RCMP into flying a drone in the interests of maintaining peace and good relations. Said, yeah, sure, we'll fly a drone overhead. And maybe, yeah, we can count your birds. And then we're told that the CFIA reprimanded the RCMP for doing that. And yeah, I can understand why, both perspectives. Because the CFIA doesn't want things inflamed. They don't want the whole thing complicated politically because of the involvement of RCMP police out there. Very slick, though. Good move by the protesters and the farm owners. Divide and conquer. Get the cops on your side. Get them to fly their drone. But why do they want a head count, and of what use is it? They're saying, see, what they're trying to do as part of their mind game is pin the strange mystery of the missing birds on the CFIA. They're saying they can't even feed and water these birds properly. They're completely incompetent. What's happened to the birds? The farm owners are worried about the low number of birds that appear to be present. So they want a head count. And what good is that? They stood up and admitted that they didn't know how many birds they had, or said that they didn't. We were told by the farm owners they had somewhere in the vicinity of like 469, something in that range to start with. Then they had the 69 birds die. That got them down to somewhere around 400. They alleged that 2 were murdered, apparently shot, although even that remains something that is, it's something of a mystery in itself, since we've seen them also say that the throats were slit. And you could see clearly in the photos that were released at one point that the throat of the one bird for sure had been slit, and yet they said it was shot. Strangely, they have the head of the rooster in a freezer, even after the fact, although all that evidence has now been tampered with. So they're demanding an investigation, like a murder investigation into the death of a bird, which would consume, I don't know what kind of resources from our police services, costing taxpayers I don't know how much, in order to get to the bottom of the murder of an ostrich. The circumstances of which, to me, seem pretty suspicious to begin with, and I know exactly where I would begin looking for an answer to that one. So they want a head count because they really just want to confuse people and make it seem now like they're the ones concerned about the missing birds. When I was concerned about the missing birds, when the CFIA did a head count and told us, and I think that they probably have a very accurate number now, but I don't think they've released the final count at this point, but we were told they only counted between 300 and 330 birds, which means we have nearly 100 birds missing based on the CFIA head count. So they've been given a head count already. Now it looks very inconvenient for them again. So they are spinning up this narrative, and they're getting their social media team to echo the same information over and over again. The farm wants a head count. The farm wants a head count. Not far be it for me to sit here and defend the CFIA. A lot of their policies, a lot of the things they do, I'm not sure how effective they are. And I think there are arguments to be made that some of these policies across the board maybe are, ripe for adjustment. But there's a process to go through for that kind of thing. And whatever you do to get a good outcome, you need to start from a place of truth and accurate information. What we're now seeing is more deflection, more misinformation or misdirection from these live streamers who are like, we want a head count. What good is your bloody head count going to do you now? Because you don't have an accurate accounting to begin with. And we were told, Karen Esperson stood up there and said, it doesn't really matter how many. We just have to save the birds. It's somewhere between 300 and 400. So the CFIA head count probably is accurate. But again, okay, you have nearly 100 missing birds, possibly. Where are the rest? And where are the babies? I'm going to leave that with you tonight. Again, maybe you want to be a citizen journalist. Maybe you want to go ask some questions of some people. Maybe you want to explore that a little bit. Where are the babies? Where are the baby birds? And if they had baby birds out there, don't you think that they would be shooting video, those poor things? as they're being led to be slaughtered as part of this call? Don't you think they would be like laser focused on those baby birds? Because those would be the birds that would generate the most clicks and the most sympathy by far, because they would be the most innocent of all the personified ostriches, all of whom we're told have names. I'd like a list of all the names, please. Because if you have names for all of them, wouldn't you then be able to account for them all? More food for thought. What are you having for Thanksgiving? Turkey? Ostrich? I kind of wonder what they're eating out there at the farm, where they, for a long time, were selling those birds for meat. Oh, yes, they were. You know it. You know what it comes down to? A lot of these people behind this whole thing, it's got nothing to do with the damn ostriches. It's just the latest thing. They're just, for the most part, anti-government protesters. And whatever the government's doing, they're just against it. And it doesn't matter what the issue is. They're just against it because they're just out there being disruptive, trying to dismantle things for whatever reason, whether they're just a sovereign citizen or a 51st stater or a separatist or just somebody who just likes to go out and have a free place to camp for the summer for a month or two, just like last year in Castleman. And now out here with this, they don't care about the damn ostriches. One way or another, when this whole thing's over with, all those people are going home and they'll forget about those birds. They're dead or alive and condemned to spend the remaining days under the oppression and I would say maybe even abuse of a needle as lab animals. So on this Thanksgiving, as you eat your poultry, pray for truth. For I think that is really about the only thing that's going to set us free. See you guys tomorrow, 7 p.m. Eastern. On the flip side.
Y'all better stand back. He's laced up his boots, cracked open a cold one, and somebody's about to get it. C-A-K! Well, he rolls into town on a Harley so loud, with a stars and stripes cape and a jaw like a plow. Don't need no laser beams, no high-tech tricks. He just winds up that boot and lets it fly real quick. He kicks ass to the left, kicks ass to the right. Captain Ass Kicker's looking for a fight. From sundown to sunrise, no brawl and bite, 'cause Captain Ass Kicker is alright. He's the outlaw hero of this one-horse town, putting punks in their place, laying bad guys down. Ain't no Cape Crusader wearing tights and blush, just a trucker hat and a boot full of hush. He kicks ass in the morning, kicks ass at night. C-A-K, don't care if you're wrong or right. You run your mouth, he's quick to ignite. Yeah, Captain Ass Kicker is dead right. from 6 states and a Waffle House, but the people still cheer when he clears the louds. He don't play nice, don't read no scripts, he just cocked his foot. Oh, they're at risk! He kicks ass in the East, kicks ass in the West. CAK don't sleep, he don't need rest. If there's trouble brewing, he's your invite. Captain Ass Kicker is bringing the fight. So when the night gets rough and the law's too slow, you better call on the man with a steel-toed glow. Captain Ass Kicker, kicking ass since the day he learned to walk.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.